The Branding Your Business podcast is for small business owners looking to build a customer favorite brand and a value driven business. From solo shows covering marketing tactics to experts sharing their brand stories, each episode delivers actionable insights for entrepreneurs who want to impact the world. We're sharing how strategic moves and authentic connections can build a profitable business minus the burnout. Tune into the Branding Your Business podcast with me, Praise Santos McKenna of Come Plum, to design a brand your audience adores while building a life you love. Hi, welcome back to the Branding Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Praise Santos McKenna, the founder of the branding studio Come Plum, based in San Francisco, California. I have a kindred spirit with me today. Imagine the Midwest version of our studio, and also with a big dog logo. So basically a lot of the things we love aligned. Mike and I are going to jump into a lot of brand studio, brand agency things together, and also talk about how we have to practice what we preach when it comes to branding and business. So let me tell you about my friend Mike Brevik. He is the founder of Cyberdogz, an agency who does brand identity, web design and development, and everything in between. He is the original Mr. Midwest Nice. And what you see is what you get, a marketer with grit, authenticity, and a relentless drive to help others succeed. He's hardworking, blue collar, and these retro ethics of his are a core part of him. He is grateful to have found a way to bring these personal vibes into his business. From an illustrator to an e-commerce pioneer, Mike has worn all of the hats. Also, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, he's literally wearing a Cyberdogz hat. And he has worked with brands like Nike, Harley Davidson, just a few household names there. Off duty, you'll find him curating nostalgia through his enduring passion for vintage arcade games, classic cars, and his prized Air Jordan collection. Also, there is a OG Jordan jersey in his background now, and we'll get into that later. But most importantly, he really prioritizes fiercely protecting the freedom to be present for his family. And also his two dogs, specifically Tonto and is it Kuda? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, so what is the origin? We always talk about brand names, the origin of it, but dog names are equally important. How did those two names come about?
Well, I was a big Lone Ranger and Tonto fan when I was a kid, and Tonto has more black on his face and it looks like he's got almost like a mask on, kind of like the Lone Ranger, but it's like, well, that's kind of a dumb name. I can't call him the Lone Ranger. So I went with Tonto instead. And then I was just looking for something kind of short and quippy to kind of match Tonto because Kuda came along 3 to 4 years after the fact. And I always thought of like a Hemi Cuda or like the Dodge car from back in like the 60s and early 70s. And I'm like, well, that'd be a kind of a cool name. So that's how we ended up there. We kind of take that extra time. I always want to come up with names that kind of make people ask questions. So yeah, that's how they got their names.
Conversation starter for sure. I dig how they're both terms of endearment for you. They're both like something that you loved, maybe a shortened version or a remix version of it. I dig that. I feel like dog names are so important. I will have a really hot take and say sometimes when people put human names on dogs, it just feels weird to me. I'm like, your dog's name is Alfred. I don't know. I'm more into a dog named like Snacks or
Right.
my dog's name is Bubbles. Just something like fun and light. What's your opinion on that?
I agree. And I think it's funny when you land on that name, it just seems to fit. Cause like when I look at them, like I can't imagine them being named anything else. They're Boston Terriers, so they have their individual attitudes. They're kind of stocky. In my terms, they're kind of badass looking in a way. So like they kind of have their little tough guy names, which is kind of funny. So yeah.
Yeah, I could see Kuda being a dog name or like a bouncer name or like a bodyguard name. So it feels like you chose them correctly. Speaking of names, brand, reputation, you hail from the Midwest, and the Midwest is so interesting because you could argue the Midwest is a brand in and of itself. Not that there's like a brand director necessarily, but I love that you describe yourself as Mr. Midwest Nice. All my friends from the Midwest are nice. I'm in San Francisco. We have a lot of Midwest transplants. But how do you have a whole subculture of Americans that embody these values of Midwest nice? What does that mean to you? Do you know anything about the origin? Tell us more about the brand of the Midwest.
Yeah. I think people in the Midwest are just, they carry with them, like you said, that Midwest nice thing, but I think it derives from kind of this small town kind of vibe and attitude where, people are willing to stop and change a tire or help somebody out. And it's kind of welcoming in that way. Having moved out of the area for a little bit and kind of being in other places in the country, like I was something that I had always kind of taken for granted because I grew up here. And when you grow up here, you honestly don't notice it. So as we've continued to kind of build the business and do things professionally throughout my career, I'm like, man, this is kind of like an untapped resource that most people, they know of it, they know it exists, and I think they greatly appreciate it. And as we continued to grow Cyberdogz and kind of become more national and sometimes even international, it was something that always came up. It's something that was always kind of thrown in my face, or I was even teased about it, like, oh, you Midwest guys. And it's just like, I really need to just start owning this whole thing because I don't pay attention to it. I don't see it as anything special because that's just where I am. It's how I grew up. It's just kind of how we are. But now that I've really paid attention to it and I've tried to, sprinkle a little gas on that fire, it's interesting how many people bring it up to me and kind of acknowledge it. It's kind of its own thing in a way. It's like this Midwest mystique thing that kind of exists, and we're just leaning into it more than anything.
I dig that because it is one of those things. There's a brand lesson here too. Sometimes we put intention around, okay, we're curating this business, we're curating this part of our reputation. And then it's also just doing an audit of what's there, of what people are associating with us. Have you seen that in the other businesses you've worked with or coach or the other brands that you've worked with too? Have you applied some of these like, hey, just audit what are people associating with you? And apply it to your work. Tell us a little bit, maybe if you have a story or an instance that comes to mind when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I talk about that with my clients all the time because we all have things, right? We all have things that people point out, whether it's the Midwest nice or, oh my God, you've got a great smile. There's always like one, two, three of these things that really stand out. And there's things that you hear time and time again, and maybe you don't even know where it's from. You're like, I don't know why people are always talking about that or pointing that out or whatever. But when you take one big step back from it and kind of think through it, it's like, well, how can I leverage that? How can I build that into my brand? How can I use this advantage of mine that people are pointing out to me and use that in a way that enhances the experience and kind of helps propel my brand forward? So like we do things like that all the time with all of our clients. And an example is I used to work with this gal who had most of the time she had her hair pulled back. And I'd say once a month she'd show up to meetings and whatnot, and she had this just amazing head of curly hair. It was just amazing. And you'd sit there and she'd walk in the meeting, and one by one, people would be like, "Oh my God, your hair, who did your hair?" And it was like this thing. And I remember pulling her aside after the meeting one time. It's like, dude, you should wear your hair like that all the time. Like the reaction you get every time you walk in a room, like, why wouldn't you? And she's like, yeah, I've always been kind of embarrassed about it, or, it gets so curly, I can't do anything with it. And she'd kind of been suppressing this like her whole life because it was in her mind kind of a pain in the butt. And I'm like, nah, man, you're like sitting on a superpower there. Like that's your icebreaker every room you walk in. Like it's fantastic. And ever since then, like I've seen her in and around different networking events and whatnot, and she's almost always got her hair down now. And it's glorious because it's like, who has hair like that? Nobody. And yeah, you got to lean into those things and kind of embrace them and kind of figure out how to do something with them, you know?
100%. Yeah, leaning into the things that make you different. There's so many brands and businesses that are like, okay, I'm going to work on my differentiator. I'm going to like make myself stand apart. But then there are some things that naturally come up, or maybe you need a objective person to be like, no, this is your superpower. This is actually
Yep.
a really good thing. And sometimes we just need that outside push to acknowledge it, which I really dig. I know we're talking a little bit about your process, but let's back up a bit too, because before you started with Cyberdogz, you were kind of working more corporate marketing and branding jobs. And then you started working with more agencies. And then even within agencies, you're like, there's still some critical pieces missing here? And you tried to flip the script of what a branding agency could be. I know a little bit about your story, but would you like to share with us kind of like the flaw you saw in traditional marketing and traditional branding and how you have set out to make Cyberdogz different and put in that differentiator?
Yeah. So I come from a creative background, so I'm kind of in tune with a lot of that stuff anyway. And within my corporate world, I was working a lot with different agencies, whether it be on kind of limited run campaigns or more annual efforts, or you had different agencies that we worked with to develop just support pieces where they were helping us generate graphics and campaigns for social media or e-commerce or whatever it was. And within all these different agencies that we worked in, I always noticed that there was like this arm's length kind of approach, whether it was from their side to us, the client, or from us to the agency. And it was always like, well, we're not quite there. We were always like 80 to 90% kind of partnered. And it was like, I want to be 100% partnered. Like I want that extra 10% because the more we're kind of connected and the longer we're connected to each other over time, kind of naturally you're going to learn things about each other's businesses and you're going to be able to execute on a higher level and all these different things. But it just never quite got there. And that was the first thing that I kind of noticed. And then after doing that for a number of years, then I noticed how fragile the relationship was when it came to price or submitting that annual contract or, just those little things. So just to kind of catch you up to where my mind was, is we had a partnership where I think we were on like our third year. And honestly, not that they weren't really good and really helpful and whatnot, but we were finally clicking. Like it took us a couple years to get where they were anticipating what it was we were trying to do. We were no longer having to explain ourselves. Like we were truly like in team mode where we were really starting to click with this agency. And we were doing annual, contract reviews and whatnot. And higher ups, outside of my control, basically, they wanted to look at other agencies. And I'm like, no, like we finally got these guys where we want them. And the value we're getting more than we're paying for finally. And it was really tough because I was lobbying for these guys because we'd put in 3 years worth of work, numerous conversations, numerous successes and failures. It was like this whole thing. And I can't remember exactly what the price was, but anyway, their proposed contract for the year came in just slightly too high. It was marginal too. It wasn't like a big deal, but that was all the excuse that the higher ups needed to say, nope, they came in too high. That doesn't fit in our budget. Now we're going to go with this other company. And, to my dismay, but also kind of what I knew was going to happen, we dropped all the way down to zero and we had to start over. We had to meet the new team. We had to tell them what we were about. We had to educate them on the brand. We had to tell them about who we are, what we do, our core values. We had to paint them the picture of this is what our budget is and this is how far we can go with it. And it was a total do-over. And nothing against that other agency, but they didn't have the same 3 years worth of life experience that the other agency had. So in my mind, I was always thinking like, I can't believe that nobody points this out. Like, I can't believe that nobody's really advocating for relationships versus price or versus project or whatever it was. So when I got to the point where I was going to start this agency or start Cyberdogz, I was like, I got to work on relationships more than anything. Can't be about price. I know those are factors within. So it's not that I'm oblivious to that, but I have to focus on the long-term vision of what's best for my clients, but also what's best for Cyberdogz to create stability, and byproduct, I won't name names, but that agency that slightly came in too high and they lost our business and blah, 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 they shut their doors, within 6 to 12 months after the fact, because we were a huge client of theirs. And that was the other thing that kind of rattled in my brain is, man, A, that must be awful, but B, how do you not see that coming? If one of your clients is floating 2/3 of the organization with that one relationship, what a fragile existence. I mean, it's good when it's good, but like these guys, unfortunately, they had the rug yanked out from under them. And it wasn't long after that, they no longer were an agency. So I just, I always remembered that. And I always thought that there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way, and how do you do that? In my mind, you have to focus on relationships. You have to focus on people. You have to focus on, making sure that you're, not treating them like a number and vice versa.
1,000%. Yeah. Numbers are important. If you're running a business, yes, like we need to pay attention to that. And that agency story is like a good example of like, oh, okay, that's like we're relying on one income stream. Let's vary it up a little bit. And there's a difference. I mean, especially in creative work, but in all work, where as humans, we crave a sense of belonging, a sense of community. And it shows up in our work of creating relationships that matter and creating good work. Unfortunate that it was a relationship that was lost that opened your eyes to this, but this is so good for our listeners to realize whether they're a small business and creating connections, like put in that personal touch, create relationships in the long run because it's a good thing to do. But two, it's also good for business because the work gets better, it gets faster, it gets in the groove of things. And as a creative, you kind of know when something is clicking and when something is not clicking. And when you have 3 years of experience, things click a lot better. Things kind of gel and groove a lot better. And so I'm so glad in a way that that happened to you so that you could lead Cyberdogz in another direction. Do you have special onboarding tricks or like continuing relationship hacks that you do as an agency that you're like, you know what, we're going to keep this relationship up because we want long-term repeat clients? Like, what is the thing you do? You have a lot of swag. I see. We see hats, jerseys. Like, is it gifts? Is it just calling people up? What is your kind of agency secret here of developing relationships?
It's all of the above. It starts with trying to pick the right people and making sure that they're people that I want to work with. And hopefully I'm somebody they want to work with. So there's got to be a likeness there where, that we want to work together. And I would say that this is going to sound cliche, but above and beyond that, we care. So, whether it's client swag just to be nice, or if it's Christmas gifts, or if it's a anniversary coming up for them in some way, like we just find ways to show them that we're on the team. So we're doing stuff like that all the time. And we're constantly kind of building that relationship and trying to get to know them and get to know what makes their business tick. Because again, sounds cliche, but if they're not successful, we won't be successful. So asking those questions and learning about their journey and the struggles and what's your pain point and how can we take that off your plate? It's just a process of getting to know these people. And, maybe this is where the Midwest nice comes in, but like we legitimately care, so we're really working hard to try to help these people understand that we are in their corner and we're on their team. And we mentioned this a little earlier, as a business, as an entrepreneur, yes, sales matter, numbers matter. Like these are all factors that we have to pay attention to, but we never let that supersede what the right thing to do is. So when we have to do a favor or bend over backwards or work late or just do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, that's not something we invoice for. That's not a leverage point for us. That's not something we use against the client so that they're fearful of even asking. So we're pretty selective on when we give it away and when we don't, and what advances the relationship. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's as best as I can explain what the secret is, because it's an over time thing. It's something that we have to kind of get a feel for. Each client is different, so we have to treat them a little different and kind of come at them differently as to how we build that relationship. And I will say that some people, they're not about it, not to pick on either coast, but if they're like from the East Coast, they're like, your niceness weirds me out. They don't want any part of it. And they're not our people.
Yeah, 100%. I get that too. I was just going to say, yeah, this is a thing about Cyberdogz. Relationships matter. That's like a core value of yours. Could be a coastal thing, but it's also a cultural thing too, where it's like, actually, this is how we exchange goods and services. So it's really knowing yourselves, knowing your clients, knowing what your values are, and knowing that you're going to repel the wrong people and attract the right people, which it goes a long way. And I kind of being open-handed about it, like, okay, maybe they're not going to like that we're not invoicing them for these things that we just think it's right to do. Some people might get weirded out by that.
Yep.
But maybe they're not our people. Maybe they're not going to gel with the work we do.
What we get mostly is people think there's a catch. Like why would you help me with X, Y, and Z with no strings attached? And it's like, well, because sometimes it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, that's what we say too, because oftentimes we're like, oh, yeah, we're a service provider. But then you forget like the keyword of serve and service. We just have to serve people. And what you said was so good of if those who are listening, maybe you're just starting off in business and you're doing these target audience exercise, like what is their problem and how can I help them solve it? A great way to figure out what their problem is just have conversations with them. Where are you getting stuck? What is your challenge? And if you have the skill set and the passion and the talent and drive to have them solve that problem, you are serving them. And just kind of going back to that, like I'm just helping people. And then this is also how you build a set of loyal fans of people who return to you time and time again, which is a really big deal. And especially if you're like tapping into your passion, you have like this pride of the work you get to do, which I know that is a big thing that you talk about a lot of like getting back to your clients' core why. Why did you even start it? So that when you start marketing and talking about your brand, they can be proud about it. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to kind of help your clients backtrack so that they could market themselves and brand themselves and run their business with pride?
Yeah, I think most people, unfortunately, I think when they start their business, I think they all kind of default to kind of what the business 101 stuff is. And with that, they borrow, they grab from other places. They kind of end up in a place that's not genuine and authentic to them, whether that's core values or how they position their brand or whatever it is. I think in their minds, they think, well, I'll just figure that out later. I've got to get this rolling and I got to do this. And all of a sudden you blink and 3, 4, 5 years have passed. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, I feel disconnected from my brand. I was always going to go back and redo my core values, but I've never done it. And they've got like this little bird's nest mess on their hands that they need to try to clean up. And by the time they come to me, I feel like they're already overwhelmed. They're like, I don't know how to fix this or how to undo this. And in my mind, it's simple. It's just, well, let's start with why you started your business in the first place. Let's kind of unpack the feelings and the excitement and whatever it was that kind of energized you to go down this road to begin with, and start layering those pieces back into the business. So, A, you can get excited about it again, but B, it comes from a very authentic place. So when somebody asks the question, now you can just answer it without having to recite somebody else's homework or trying to remember, like, what did I put in place for that? It's just a very kind of organic and simple way to come at it. And I think through that process and through that journey, I think they kind of rediscover themselves in like, oh man, like that is why I did this, or that's how I got excited about this to begin with. And as any entrepreneur knows, you just start wearing all these hats. And over time, everybody has their dark days, but over time, it starts to lose its passion because you're like, this is not near as sexy as I thought it was going to be when I started. And you want to maintain that because that's the juice that keeps you rolling. That's the stuff that keeps you excited and keeps the energy flowing. And I always talk about this with clients is that if you can maintain that excitement on some level, your sales will improve. Like your pitch is better, your energy is different. Like all of a sudden you're talking about these things with people who get it because they're going to be like, man, I want what that guy's got. That's exciting. You see what he's doing? And it's an energy that, kind of keeps the conversation rolling for you. And when you're beat up, tired, and not connected with your brand, the message is different. It's flat. It's not the same. And I think most people get that. But it's tough, early entrepreneurs that they're trying to squeeze blood from a turnip and save money. And they don't have not only the awareness and the kind of the perspective, but they also don't have the funds to do it. So, if I can catch them early on, I do. But in a lot of cases, they're coming to me 3 to 5 years after the fact.
Totally. Which again, we talk about this with a lot of empathy because I've been there too. Like you're just like, okay, I'm just trying to make this business work. So you start saying yes to all these things. Then you start adding all these services. And then you start kind of have this interesting conglomerate of a business that's like making it, but yet you're really tired or something's not clicking or someone asks you what you do and you feel a little sense of like shame or disconnectedness. So if you all are listening to the podcast and you're maybe in that spot, what Mike is encouraging to do, like just scale it back. Really go back to the beginning. Why did you start it? No one forced you to start this business. There was a why. There was a spark. How can you get back to that? How can you remind yourself of what that is so that when folks ask you, or honestly, as you continue leading and running the business, it gets that life force back. It gets that energy, that excitement. I love when I talk to entrepreneurs, whether it's in a discovery call or a meeting with them, and you hear the excitement in their voice, or you hear maybe they're not saying it in such a concise, polished version, but you get it. Like it clicks with
Yeah.
you. Their energy is just like, you've got the stuff, you've got it figured out, or if you really tapped into your why and you haven't lost it. And so this is some encouragement to you, even if perhaps you kind of lose your way, there's always a way to get back to it. There's always a way. Maybe you have a small business group of friends, or even just a good friend in your life to ask you these tough questions. Maybe the good friend is a journal for you to sit down with. Why did I even start? What can keep me going? Do you ever feel like you wear so many hats as a small business owner? I totally get that. Here at Come Plum, we want to keep you in your zone of genius, how you serve and show up for people. So leave the branding to us. In a collaborative way through brand coaching, we help you define your brand foundations, your brand strategy, and your brand expression, all that fun stuff like logo, websites, videos, photos, and more. If you go to comeplum.com and mention in the contact form that you heard about us through our Branding Your Business podcast, you get cool perks like an extra hour of coaching or maybe even 10% off your coaching package. We can't wait to collaborate with you to build a brand that you and your clients love. I want to turn that back on you, Mike, because you started this back in 2015. So it's been about 10 years of leading Cyberdogz. What keeps you going? What is that why that really drives you and gets you excited about honestly doing the work of being an entrepreneur and being a brand professional?
I just really enjoy the challenge every day. And I have my frustrating days and my days where I'm like, what am I doing? Like I think we all do. But I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy kind of helping clients succeed. I enjoy the model that we've built for ourselves. And that to be said is one that hopefully fills our cup more days than it depletes it. So we're coming up with reasons and ideas all the time. Sometimes it's not about the money. Sometimes it's just about doing cool stuff. And so throughout each year, we kind of come up with a few examples and projects and things that like, who cares about profit? We're doing this one for the team. We're doing this one for fun. And it's amazing how much gas that puts in the tank, so to speak, to kind of keep you rolling on other stuff. The parts I hate about the business are the business parts. That's the stuff that I can do it and I'm not horrible at it, but that's not what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's the creative stuff. It's the team. It's the clients. It's the interactions. Like it's coming up with the ideas and even having conversations with people like you right now. Like that's the stuff that's fun for me because, it's one of these skill sets or superpowers that in the corporate world, I didn't even know I had. I didn't even know that I could enjoy such things because I was so busy punching a clock and following the rules that I didn't realize that I could be having a lot more fun. And now that I'm doing it 10 years in, I mean, it's gone by like a flash. So it doesn't feel like 10 years, but we've done a lot of cool stuff in 10 years and a lot of cool things that I think just kind of propelled us to the next year. The 20-year mark is going to happen like that as well. It's just, it goes so fast when you enjoy it.
Yeah. I feel like there's like some cheesy dad joke in there. Like a frog said, like, it's fun when you're having flies, but it's really like time flies when you're having fun. Again, Mike and I are acknowledging, yes, like you have to do the business stuff. And you're listening to this podcast, so you're already doing the work.
Yep.
And this is your permission slip. Also do the things that are just fun. Like take on projects that are fun or take on projects that are not even projects, but just spend your time like letting your creative side go, kind of your wild side go, which can you give us a hint? Like, are you doing any fun projects right now? If you don't want to name names, that's fine. But is there a recent project that you're like, that was just like a fun creative challenge. We did it. That was the best.
Yeah. So like over the past few years, and I'll do this quick to get you up to speed, but We had an idea of reaching out to this company and almost forcing ourselves, like, hey, we're going to do something with you, kind of a thing. And it turned out to be kind of just an amazing experience where we were able to do a couple like co-branded collaborations with them the first year we worked with them. Last year we did a co-branded Cyberdogz motorcycle with them. And it was just, what does that really mean to the business? Nothing. It means nothing to the business. It really didn't help us grow at all. Like, but man, was it cool. Like, this is what we did. We're making content. So fast forward in 2025, we're talking with them about being a flat track sponsor for their new motorcycle race team that they're putting together. Now, what does that mean for Cyberdogz? I don't know. Probably nothing. But man, won't that be cool? Won't that be cool if we can participate in, creating a brand around this flat track oval racing stuff and, go to these different events. And we're just looking at it as a creative opportunity to not only help this brand push their business and their brand forward, but also to end up somewhere that we never would have guessed we would have ended up. That's what's interesting about this approach and kind of how we do things is that we're in places we never should have been in the first place, but we're there now and we're maximizing the opportunity and we're building relationships and we're just doing some really cool things. So even colleagues and people that I work with locally, they're constantly asking the question of, well, how did that happen? Or how did Cyberdogz end up? And it's an icebreaker. It makes for a great story, and you could call it innovative if you want to, but it's in a lot of ways it's just dumb luck. Right place, right time, and we're the ones asking the questions to get our foot in the door. It's as simple as that. But I think what we've learned in that process is just don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to find a way to make it fit, even if it doesn't.
This is so good. Just again, where it's not so much transactional, it's just answering the question, wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be fun if? And it also reminds me of someone who is just kind of relentless of asking a person out. Just like, hey, I'm gonna like stay in your sphere. Oh, maybe this time you put me in the friend zone, but I'm gonna keep
Right.
asking and keep asking. Oh, wait, the relationship is developing more. Wait, I'm gonna keep asking. And it's just this relentless, energetic, a wonderful again relationship that you've built with this brand, and how you can be like, okay, cool, now we're sponsoring one of their tracks. Like, I don't think 10 years ago you would have thought this was even possible or even a dream, and now here you are having it as icebreakers, getting to talk about it on podcasts. I think that is really fun.
Yeah, and I mean, you're 100% right. I never saw it coming, but I guess now that we're in that mode, like now we're looking for it all the time. Now we're trying to find ways to, wouldn't it be cool if, and then, God, can we make that happen? Can we wiggle in there? Can we make that call? Can we? And it really, like, that stuff for us, if it does turn into paying clients and those kinds of things, great. But if it doesn't, that's really not what it's about anyway. It's about filling our cup. And if 80 to 90% of the business is doing what it should do, we have time for that. We have time to explore and to have fun and to kind of pull at some of those strings just to see what's on the other side.
100%. It's budgeting, right? Like with our personal finances, you're like, okay, these are our needs, and then this is our fun money. With our businesses, we can do that too. Okay, these are like projects that are going to keep our business going, and then this is just the life-giving fun stuff, which I dig so much. And there's so much wealth here that we already talked about that are timeless truths about businesses and brands, right? Like tapping into your why, making sure you know what your differentiator is, leaning into that, giving yourself permission to do the fun things. What is it though? Maybe this is more trending, but if we think about the small business owners who are listening to the podcast, who are thinking, okay, I really want to have a leg up in my branding this year. What have you seen work for Cyberdogz? What have you seen work for your clients? What are you investing in, even as an entrepreneur yourself, to give Cyberdogz as a brand a leg up in 2025?
I'll answer this in two ways because it's also like our biggest flaw is you have to be consistent. And what we suffer from is we get so busy in the day to day that we push off the meeting, or we'll launch that next week, or we just push ourselves off so much that we end up backburnering our own efforts, but then it breaks that chain of consistency. So whether it's social media or just lead generation, or even it's, even if it's knocking on those doors to see what relationships might be on the other side, you got to stick with it and you got to be consistent with it. Like, I'm a huge hypocrite for throwing that out there, but it's something we struggle with, and it's something we're really trying to remedy in 2025, because we know that every time we commit, results happen every time. And the dumb question is, well, then why don't you do that more often? Yeah, I know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. But that's the thing, is you just got to stick with it and give it time. I really believe entrepreneurship and doing the things that we're doing, it's almost impossible to fail if you're on it, if you're diligent, if you're really on top of it. Like, you can't miss. There's always an opportunity there. You got to find them. You got to keep your eyes open. But if you stick with it, they happen. They show up.
Yeah, I get that. Where it's one of those things that if you just keep on going down this path, right? Because there's so many different marketing channels. People are often listening to this for marketing tips. Okay, should I be on the social media channel? Should I just be networking more? Should I be tapping into YouTube? Should I be doing long form content? Should I be working on my SEO? Should I do lead generation? There's so many ways, right? Because in marketing, we talk about it's just telling people that you exist and this is what you do and this is how you can help them. But in 2025, literally a million ways of how to do that. But oftentimes I see this in myself. So I'm raising my hands. I see this a lot with entrepreneurs. Like, you try and you do it maybe for like a week, maybe a month, and you're like,
Yep.
I don't see results. I'm going to give up. And it's hard to keep that consistency. And yet, sometimes if you do it for a month, 2 months, and then you start gaining momentum and it starts becoming a positive feedback loop. But oftentimes in the beginning, it's just like, it's hard to build that new habit. It's hard to keep going. So Mike and I both are just raising our hands like, we've been there, but we're also preaching, continue showing up. Like, pick that avenue and continue showing up. Is there an avenue that you are committing to in 2025? Is it doing more podcasts? Is it doing
For,
more fun reach outs? What is it for you all?
for me, it's content. Kind of like the Midwest Nice thing. Like, we started down that social media road and that content road reluctantly. I didn't want to be the face of the brand. I wanted Cyberdogz to be its own thing. And I wanted to be a player, a spoke in the wheel, so to speak. And the more time that passed, the more I started to realize that I can't not be in front of this thing, because I'm the one speaking out on behalf of it. I'm the one selling it. I'm so involved that I kind of had to just get over it and just understand that I need to step up a little bit and kind of take the responsibility for being, kind of the tip of the umbrella here. And with that, I was reluctant going into social media and even doing podcast interviews and stuff like that, because I didn't want to be the face of it. I'd rather be in the background. I just didn't want to. Well, now that I've been doing it long enough, kind of like the Midwest Nice thing, I get a lot of good feedback. I get people that are like, hey, I loved when you talked about this. And all of a sudden, they're asking me questions about other things. And it's turning into this thing where I'm finding another opportunity or another path in which to help people, to help other entrepreneurs, to share my experiences, all these different things. So it's another way to give back, but at the same time, it grows the business. It puts the brand out there. It puts Mike out there. It helps do a lot of positive things that I don't know that I ever would have gotten there if I'd have just stayed in the corner like I wanted to. So in 2025, that's kind of what we're trying to do, is like, let's be more intentional. Let's put out more content. Let's talk to more people. Let's come up with cool projects, no strings attached, and just do some cool stuff with other people that want to do cool stuff. So we're trying to take the balls down and, just kind of see what happens with it. And, I don't know if I don't know if I'll go viral in 2025. And to be honest, I don't really care. As long as we're, kind of feeding the mission of Cyberdogz and doing some good things along the way.
Yeah. Again, goes back kind of to your why. Like, let's just keep on helping people. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking before. Maybe we're reluctant, but people are like, you need to be more of the face, Mike. As much as we love the Cyberdogz logo, people want to see the human behind it. And I've seen this too as we advise some of our clients when it comes to personal brand. AI is so cool right now. I mean, we're on a platform right now that uses some AI to make our work faster. And I like to say that this technology and these robots, gives us more time to connect with more people, because that's actually the human need that it's really fulfilling, is that people just want to see the people behind it, especially if you're a service provider that has a high value on relationships. If you can help them preview what a relationship with you is like, what it's like to like sit in a room, have a digital coffee with someone, and you're like, oh wait, I could kick it with him. He seems really cool. I could just talk about these things that I find interesting, that he finds interesting. And that's often how we see personal brands like gaining traction. And you start getting these comments of like, that was really helpful. That helped me change my mind. And it is hard to continue to create content. I get it, especially because it's kind of this continual black hole that you're feeding, because you have so many questions to answer, so many things that you could be speaking on. But once you find your groove, once you find the thing that makes it fun, also going back to what you said before, like, how could I be a personal brand, but do it in a way that like, I like it and makes it fun? That seems like the way that consistency can be less of a grind and more of just like, cool, I get to do this thing. And we're excited to see that you, as the personality behind Cyberdogz, is doing that more in 2025. And we can't wait to hear the continued results and the feedback you get from it. I want to just do a double click. We know a little bit about what you're working on, like as a business leader, but I also run a similar agency where we work with a few other team members and we work with other creatives. And I love doing a little agency case study. So can we do that with Cyberdogz right now? Because everyone structures it differently. And for those who are listening and who are thinking about starting more of an agency model, I'm asking these questions for you all because, one, you could be a team of one, and solopreneurship is incredible. And I know that you are limited and you also have a zone of genius and a zone of excellence. And there are cool ways to bring on team members to really grow an agency or grow your business to be more of a team. So let's do a Cyberdogz case study. So what is your role and what are your team members' roles? Give us a little bit of insight into that.
I'm always trying to back out of the day-to-day, because when I first started Cyberdogz, 99% of it ran through me, and I was, one of one and whatnot. So as I've continued to grow the team, my role has always been to try to get out of the middle of it and let them shine, let them do their things. I'm mostly out, I still participate and I still advise and I still do a lot of different things with the team on the day-to-day, but I'm trying to kind of become more of a coach and a mentor and, kind of somebody that can get them up to that level that we want Cyberdogz to be. So there's myself and so I primarily today administering, what those client relationships need to look like. I'm doing a lot of mentoring on the day-to-day. I still am doing some sales. I'm still kind of the visionary for the brand itself, what we're doing there operational wise, and even from a brand perspective, what are we putting out into the public? And then kind of what does the future look like? So I'm kind of procuring all that and trying to grow, kind of what that vision looks like so that we're mapped out at least 3 to 5 years in advance and not just living in, day-to-day world. So with that, we have 3 project managers, we have 3 graphic artists, we have some web developers, we have a social media team, and each person kind of, not only has their own role and relationships within the team, but then their client set that they work with. I work with them and they work with each other on how do we mesh these things together so that we're not, operating in a vacuum. How does the brand experience with client X, what does that look like in website form versus print form versus content form versus social media form? Because although on paper we do agency things and we look a lot like a traditional agency, our focus on brand and relationships and really, kind of helping tell that story of who these people are, what they do and what makes them unique, that has to be there no matter what. And I'd say at times, it actually hurts us because the client we just want you to execute. We don't care. We don't care about the fluff, but we do. That's the thing. And for us to do our jobs or us to do it in a way that means something to us and benefits you, we have to do it that way. So we're pretty black and white in the regard that we definitely have to stick with our approach, because I don't want to be cookie cutter and I don't want to be just a transactional agency. So we have to make sure we maintain that internally. And to get to this point, it's something we talk about, it's something we work on, and it's something that we're still trying to figure out on the daily. So a lot of internal work happening on the daily to make sure that we're evolving and growing into what we said we would.
Yeah, that's huge because even though you start off your career as a designer, you're not designing for every client, right? You have other talented designers. You're not managing every project. Maybe you're helping with the sales of it, but then you can pass it on. And yet, the thing that made Cyberdogz different, right, is your approach. And the thing that made you proud of what you do, you still want to make sure it's integrated into, which is, again, really interesting because your clients are like, oh, we don't need that. You're like, we need it though. This is a partnership. It is about the client, but it's also about you being proud of the work that you do. Now that Cyberdogz is like 10 years old, what has made you the most proud? What has also made you the most profitable?
I think our attention to detail, the creativity, I think never treating it like a project. Like for us, it's always like a passion thing. How can we take Joe's plumbing and make it the most creative plumbing? Like we're never looking at it as though the brand or the execution doesn't matter that much. Maybe in this industry, it's boring, or we've never really treated it like that. It's like, how do we make these guys look kick ass compared to their competition? Like we've always trying to take it up a notch, or even selfishly, like I just did this the other day. We had a prospect come to us and basically they just wanted a website. And okay, but when I look at your brand, when I look at your messaging, when I look at your content, when I look at your social media, you need a lot more than a website. So let's figure out a way to put this package together that gets you all of the above, partially for you, but partially because if I'm going to put my name on it, if I'm going to put designed by Cyberdogz on the bottom of your website or whatever it is, I want all the other elements to reflect our talents as well. So that was one of those things where, we guided, we coached, we mentored the client into why it matters and what the impact might be for their business. But we also kind of took it in the shorts to a degree to price it so that they could afford it because we knew that it valued us. We could have just done the website and put it out there as is, but we know there's better value if we can tweak these other things and make these people, look amazing like we know that they can. And I think, to your question, I think that's the part that's made us the most successful, is because we're not transactional. And when a client comes to us, we're going to give them that guidance on what puts them in the best position to succeed no matter what.
Yeah. Whenever I go out to eat, like stay with me with this analogy,
Yep.
I actually love a server who tells me you're not actually ordering the right thing. You think you want this, but you actually maybe want this, but you need to pair it with this, or our special of the day is kind of better. And so we often talk about that with our clients who are also service providers. Okay, yes, ask them what their challenges are, what they need. And they might be clear. I want X. I want a website, or I want a massage, or I want this. And then you talk with them more like, actually, I took a look at all that you're putting out there. And because I want your business and brand to succeed, I think you not only need this, you probably need these things too. And that's a service in and of itself of just like,
Yep.
I want you to really succeed. And we have a skill set to help you get along there. They can always say yes or no, but when you want to be proud of that work, you offer that to them. And going back to my restaurant analogy, I love going back to those restaurants. I'm like, I don't know the kitchen. I don't know what's seasonal. I'm going to trust you as the professional who's here day in and day out in food. Whereas I'm just like showing up for a good time. Give me a good time. I think I know what I need, but I really trust you to guide me and coach me. And it sounds like that's what you have done leading Cyberdogz and as an agency. I think that's huge.
Yeah, and I think people appreciate it. They can always say no, but the other thing is when we get a sense of who that person is and what their energy is, we kind of know how hard to push, or what opportunities being left on the table because they don't know what they don't know. So in my mind, I mean, I think that's our responsibility to say, hey, I know this is what you want and we'll give you that, but you also need this. Here's why.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And that's you're lending your years of experience as a service, which I think is huge. Mike, this has been so insightful. I feel like our listeners will just gain a lot of insight what it is to be an entrepreneur, what they can do to up-level their brand. I feel like this is a very repeatable episode for people to listen to. We are going to end our podcast. We love to play some fun games here. This is part of an exercise we do with some of our clients too, but it's always fun to work with another brand or a marketer to see kind of what's on their mind. And so we have these value cards, and we know values are a big thing when it comes to brand. And so I kind of just want to see what's top of mind. I'm going to pick like 3, and you can't overthink it. I don't know what's coming up, but any brand or person, maybe it's the curly haired colleague that comes to mind,
Yeah.
then you're just going to say their name. Okay. So let me pick our first one. Okay. What brand comes to mind when you think of self-discipline?
I would say Nike. So I love studying nostalgic brands and whatnot. And if you look at like their chronological growth and evolution over the years, like you can see there's some serious discipline there and what buckets and silos they fall within their marketing, branding, their visuals. So I'd say Nike.
Nike. So much to learn from them.
Uniqueness. I'm going to throw it back to, I didn't even quite get it, but like, if you watch the Super Bowl, I thought Pringles had like a very unique, humorous mustache joke. They had a great commercial this year. Like, and again, what's the point of it? How did that help them sell chips? I have no idea, but it was very unique. It was very clever. And yeah, I thought they did a good job.
I dug that too, because it's also very like UGC as well, even though it was like professionally shot with celebrities, but that was really unique. That was very fun. I dig that too. Okay, last one. Okay, I'm gonna pick it now actually. Ooh, yeah, this one's gonna be a little more left field. Power. What brand comes to mind with the value of power?
I love what Dodge is doing right now. You know, whether it's their Dodge Challenger or some of their muscle car, they have a soft spot for the whole muscle car generation, and they're doing a lot of different things with their promotion of that just kind of screams testosterone. And I just think it's kind of cool that they're just leaning into that. It's not your traditional car video. I think it's pretty cool, and I think it's very nostalgic how they're trying to make that connection back to the muscle car lovers of like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I dig that so much. How can our listeners connect with you, Mike? How can they see you showing up more as a personal brand? How can they connect with Cyberdogz?
Yeah, so they can check us out at cyberdogsmarketing.com. I and Cyberdogz are both on LinkedIn, so check us out there. I have a podcast called the Brand Retro Podcast, so they can get more information and episodes and all kinds of things there. And then pretty much pick your poison on social media. We're pretty much on all of them. So Facebook, Twitter, or X, I should say, Instagram, TikTok. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place. So if people want to follow along or reach out directly, they can find me.
This is so good. Thanks so much, Mike, for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.